In this video, we're going to be discussing permanent waving. So at the onset, what we're going to do is first review the structure of the hair. This is our hair shaft. This is a straight hair. This is a curly hair. When I'm looking at the hair shaft, remember we're looking at end bonds, cysteine, soft form, elasticity. Cross bonds, cystine, the hard form, my strength. The same with curly hair. On the end, the cystine for elasticity, but the cross bonds, instead of going straight across, are at an angle, and depending on how much curl, how close together they are, and if they're farther apart, it's more wavy. But once again, ammonia-based products, so we'll be talking about the ammonia-based permanent waving and the ammonia-based soft curl and ammonia-based relaxers, like ammonium hydroxide for the hair. What you want to remember is that the chemical reaction is ammonia converts cystine to cysteine. Cystine is the hard form, cysteine is the soft form. So the state board answer is the effect that ammonia or alkalis have is to soften. So what they're telling you is it's taking the hard form of sulfur and making it the soft form, and ammonia is the chemical that does that. So we have this chemical, even though it says in the textbook there are ammonia-free perms, there really are not. Because as you look at the ingredients, the one starts with ammonia, amino, and the other is monoethynylamine. And any word that has amine in it indicates ammonia. It's just not the same type of gas that's in the ammonia perms, but it still converts the cystine to cysteine, or you don't have a permanent. Without ammonia in our chemicals, we don't get the alkaline reaction that we need, where it may not be the quote active ingredient per se. In permanent waving it is, because I need to take that hard form and make it soft so I can reshape it. In permanent waving, it takes the shape of the rod that you've put it on. In permanent waving, the wrapping of the perm is controlling whether it's good or not. You have to do a good wrap. So in permanent waving 1, you learn how to wrap a permanent effectively. Then we get to the word tension. How much is too much? How much is not enough? Well, if I'm wrapping on my mannequin head and I pull and the head comes off the head clamp, that's too much. Now, nobody's going to pull their client's head off their shoulders, but you will see the scalp move. So I need the hair shaft to be perfectly straight, but I don't want the hair or the scalp to move. That's too much. If the shaft sags and it droops down, that's not enough. I have to have the correct amount of tension on the hair going around the rod so that during this conversion process of converting the cystine to cysteine, the hair can take the shape of the rod it's on. In straightening the hair, I'm going to be using my thumb or my fingers, and I'm going to be applying a straightening method this way. But still, I have to get my application. It's a curly hair. I need to have just enough tension that it's straight. If I don't have tension and I apply it to a curly hair, and we'll look at this as a curly hair, and I just lay it on top of, then there's no solution, no product in the dip. So I pull the hair straight, and then I apply my product, and I have an even application. When I release the hair, it will go back to curly, and you may see it pushing out the cream that was in the dip. Pull it back out and push it back in. Remember that my ammonia is positive, so is the cuticle. So I am going to get that kind of a repelling action there. But when I do my application, I want the curly hair straight, so all of my product gets on the full length of the hair equally. If I don't hold it straight, it can't get into the depression, and I'm not going to have as even a straightening as I want it to be. As the book, I have to say this, the book uses the word break. Well, you know, when you break something, it separates. And that's not, we use that word because we didn't understand exactly what was going on inside the hair shaft, but you don't break the bonds. You convert the hard form to the soft form. They move around with molecular motion because of the action being taken. The molecules are actually moving, and they're not being broken, they're being converted from the hard form to the soft form. So during this conversion process, how do I know when a perm's done? How do I know? Well, I can remember when I was in beauty college, my teacher would tell me, call me when you think the perm is done. So I'd take I did everything I was supposed to do. I'd, go get her, and I'd say, I think my perm's done. She'd come back and take a test curl, and she'd go, no, wait 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes, I go back and get her. It's been 5 minutes. She'd come back, say, wait 5 more minutes. I'd wait the 5 more minutes, go get her. She'd wait 2 more minutes, and then you'll be done. Well, in my brain, I said 5, 5, and 2 is 12. So when I think the perm is done, I'll wait 12 more minutes, and she'll be so happy that I got it right. So I waited the 12 minutes. I went and got her. She came back. No, wait 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. And at that moment, in my brain, I said, she doesn't know how to process a perm. I was told the same thing. So I won't ask anymore. I'll just try to figure it out on my own. Because if the teacher doesn't know how to tell you when something is done, how do you know? And when you do find someone that helps you understand it, you can't take us to the salon with you. You have to understand that the hair goes through a series of changes. Okay, so when I'm applying my perm solution to the rod, the hair should be smooth around the rod. As I put the solution on, sometimes it'll beat up and roll off because it's all positive. Okay, sometimes it doesn't, and it'll soak into, but it has a high gloss to it. Wet hair is shiny. It's kind of like a mirage when you're driving in the desert. Out in front of you, the pavement looks wet, but when you get there, it's dry. And you're going like, where'd the shine go? Where'd the water go? It's not there. So when you're saturating your perm, you know the solution is through the cuticle when the shiny turns dull. Until the shiny goes to dull, it can't get into the cuticle. It has to process through. My cuticle is anywhere from 5 to 7 layers thick, so depending on the porosity, okay, it's going to control, the more porous the hair, obviously the solution can penetrate very readily. But if I have a resistant hair, this got it could be up to 11 layers thick. That's unusual, but it could be. So if I have a thicker cuticle, that is going to take longer to happen. There's no such thing as a self-timing perm. The instructions are written for normal hair, and it says wait 10, whatever it says. So the analogy, once again, is that steak. If I have fine hair, in other words, a steak that's only like this thick, and then I have coarse hair, I have a steak this thick, there's no way that they can process or cook in the same amount of time and be equal. I have to be able to judge. The other thing I need to know is how close together my crossbonds are. In a resistant hair, your crossbonds are very close together. That is a very strong hair. Normally, they're distance, and if the hair is weak, they're really far apart. You can't see that without a microscope. So when you're discussing with your client, every time you get a perm, do you have any issues when you get perms? Do you have anything that you think I should know? Like, does the hair seem to lose its curl after 2 or 3 weeks? Does one side curl better than the other? Do you have any issues that you'd like to tell me? Well, my mom's hair always curled faster on the right side than it did the left side. Okay, so when I'm wrapping the perm, I notice I'm wrapping the right side before the left side. With the water bottle. The water bottle. Okay, you get over here and you wrap. The water has evaporated. Some of the water has evaporated from here. It hasn't over here, so I've diluted my solution over here. So when you're wrapping a perm, you want to make sure you have equal moisture content, and don't the last section and saturate that hair with water, because you're going to dilute your solution. You're not going to have as much curl. But it also could be a structure issue. The hair doesn't grow at the same rate. All you have to do is look at new growth. Hair grows faster in the nape, slowest in the crown. And sometimes the right or the left side will grow faster than the other. And that's only obvious in hair coloring when you're doing a retouch. So the next time you get a retouch, take a look at how much new growth there is, okay? And that's going to tell you how fast each area is going to grow. In a curly hair, you have the same issue: strong, normal, and weaker hair. Weaker hair is usually a health issue, maybe, and pregnancy is usually strong, because when a woman's pregnant, she's taking all these prenatal vitamins and keeping her health up so she has a healthy baby, which manufactures healthy skin, healthy hair, healthy nails, which translates to you, the hairdresser, resistant. Okay, and so we have those issues. Likewise, surgery, having an anesthetic, can weaken the hair shaft at that particular time, because normally you don't eat as well when you don't feel as well. So once again, this is all determined throughout a whole entire growth pattern. Once my solution has penetrated the cortex, now I get the swell. Remember, soften and swell. So as the inside begins to expand, instead of being smooth like a potato chip, you end up with ruffles, have ridges. Okay? And you know that it's in the cortex and the expansion has started, because the hair doesn't expand evenly. Every hair is an individual hair, expands at an individual rate. So you're going to see bumpies across that smooth. Now, if you didn't wrap correctly, you're not going to see those signs. They're not going to be visible to you because your wrap was weak. Now I sound like my teenager. That was weak. Okay, so when I test the rod, do not, in fact, some solutions tell you, do not take a test curl and just rinse it and blot it, but you have to take a test curl. But you cannot take a test curl at the wrong time. Remember, I don't know if any of you bake, but when you put a cake in the oven, the cake is wet and flat. As you look into the oven window with the light on, of course, you'll notice it starts to rise and it goes from shiny to dull. That tells you that the external part of that cake is doing what it's supposed to do. But the inside is still weak. It's not done. I have to wait for the cake to pull away from the edges. If I open that oven door before that happens, my cake collapses in the middle. The same thing happens with a perm. If you take a test curl before the rod doesn't move, it will collapse and you'll lose your curl. So when it's in the cortex and I have the molecular movement of my cystine being moved into the position of the size of the rod, if I take a test curl and it unwinds itself, it is far from done. In fact, if I've waited 5 to 10 minutes and it does that, I need to resaturate because I probably had too much water in the hair during my wrapping process. If there's a slight movement where the rod just lifts a little bit, sometimes you'll see the papers moving on the inside. That means the ends are too wet. The outside is there, So I need to resaturate. I'm not going to have an even curl if I've wrapped with too much water or if I miss test. Once I unhook the rod, I take it, I put my finger on the rod and I unhook it, and then I remove my finger. If that rod doesn't move, molecular motion has stopped. There is no more converting of cysteine to cysteine. So one of two things have happened. I've either run out of gas or I'm done. How do I know? Well, now's when I can take my test curl. Now I can take the test curl, and if I see the dip, then I know we're done. Now I can take her to the sink and rinse her off. The same is reversed in the straight hair. I'm pressing it. If that hair crawls back, it isn't done. If I press it and it doesn't move, but I can still feel the bumpies, the cuticle hasn't been smoothed out yet. Okay, but I can take her to the shampoo bowl at this time. When the hair is slick and smooth and doesn't move, I'm done. Now I can take it off. So the hair gives you an actual visual as to how do I know when it's done. No more guesswork, okay? So now I need to neutralize it. Once I take her to the sink and I rinse the solution out of the hair, I begin the molecular movement. It's like shaking a bottle of Italian dressing. Once I shake it and sit it down, it settles again. And eventually everything separates. Oil, vinegar, and the last are all the spices at the bottom. I shake it up again, I have them all moving. So that's what happens when you rinse the hair. All of the molecules start moving around the rod. You can't neutralize them at this point. You can't connect them. It's like, I was gonna say somebody being on crack, how they pop around, but maybe you don't know how that is. Okay, so once I rinse, I'm gonna blot all the moisture out of the hair, and I'm gonna wait 5 to 10 minutes. I need to let the molecules stop moving around that rod and go back to no movement. Now when I apply my neutralizer, they'll all convert from cysteine back to cysteine because it's the oxygen gas that hardens the hair. So ammonia gas softens, converting the cysteine to cysteine. The oxygen gas in the neutralizer converts the cysteine back to cysteine and hardens. But if I just rinse, blot, and apply immediately, because of all that molecular movement, I'm only neutralizing parts of it, and I'll have a weaker perm. If I wait those 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to lock it all up, and then I'm going to have a stronger perm that lasts longer. So how do I know if I should wait the 5 or the 10? Well, did you have to resaturate? Because you can run out of gas, or you can dilute it before. The hair is coarser. It has more cross bonds usually. So depending on how long your processing time took you would determine how long you wait between. A fine hair, 5 minutes, okay? A coarser hair, maybe the 10. But if I have a resistant fine hair that I maybe had to resaturate because I didn't have enough ammonia gas to do all the converting, maybe the rod stopped moving, but when I took my S pattern, it didn't drop down and it was weak. If that's the case, I need to resaturate. Then I'm going to wait, and then I'm going to neutralize. And then my processing is done. I've converted my cysteine to cysteine, my cysteine back to cysteine, and I'm actually, and then if I'm in a soft curl or a straightener, I can stop here with a straightener, but if I'm in a soft curl, after I rinse it out, I have an issue. Okay, because the oxygen in the water begins to reharden the ammonia, the cysteine, and convert it back to cysteine. The oxygen in the air begins the conversion. So once I've taken the step 1 out, the breakdown cream, once I've taken that out, if I could apply a light oil or a light conditioning oil. I think Mr. P used to use, I don't remember what he used to use. If I have a teacher out there who can tell you, that'll help you, because in your permanent waving class, when you put that oil-based conditioner on, and some products give it to you, they have you apply a conditioner between these two steps. And the reason they do that is to stop the oxidation. I don't want that hair to lock up straight. And it's going to do it a little bit. So once I get it around the rod, I'm resaturating with my liquid perm to convert back any of the cystine back to cysteine so it can take the shape of the rod. And then I still have that processing time to wait. After I've rinsed the liquid perm out of the hair, I'm going to blot it, and I'm going to wait my 10 minutes, in this case for the relaxer and curl, the soft curl. I'm going to wait the 10 minutes. I want to let all of that molecular movement, I want it to stop, so that I can lock up that hair in the right position, and once again, it's going to last longer and be better, just because I understand what's happening within the structure of the hair. Now I look at my chemicals, okay, and I'm looking at the 2 ingredients that it takes to make a cold wave. Okay, we have ammonia and we have thioglycolic acid. Remember, we studied the word thio means sulfur. Then you have glycolic acid. So you have sulfuric acid, glycolic acid to get thioglycolic acid. And then I have my ammonia. When the chemist brings these together, he calls it ammonium thioglycolate. You have endothermic and exothermic reactions. It's in your textbook. It's also in the handout. Everything I'm talking about basically is in your handout, all right? But then the book talks about ammonia-free perms, of which there are none. Okay, DEA, MEA, and TEA are amines. And MEA is monoethylene amine, and it is these are very strong alkalis, and they still have ammonia in them, but it's not the same gas. It's an ammonia compound. It's just not ammonia, quote, gas, like you put in your car. So I have DEA, which is diethanol, and MEA, which is triethanol. These 3 alkalis are in styling gels. So if I've given a permanent wave and I have these chemicals in it, then when I put on a styling gel, I'm taking my perm out. I'm also reducing my color. Another biggie that I forgot to mention in sodium hydroxide relaxers is never use a styling gel that has either MEA, DEA, or TEA. TEA is triethanol amine. It's in almost every styling gel you see because it's there to soften the hair. You put that on top of sodium hydroxide relaxed hair and it will come off. Ask me how I know. Okay, one of my students had just done a relaxer. Luckily the hair was short. And he took the regular styling gel that all schools use, put it on her hair. She wanted a finger wave. And as he's combing the hair is on top of the comb. It's no longer attached to her head. Push it back down. He goes, so, da-da-da, her hair is breaking off. So I came, sure enough, put a finger wave in, put the ridge back in with the hair that had become disconnected, and let it dry. I said, please don't shampoo your hair. You can't unfry chicken. I can't reattach that hair. It has to grow back. And your styling gels are so important on your chemically treated hair. Read the ingredients. DEA, MEA, TEA will take a straightener and take the hair out. It will remove the curl from a permanent. It will remove the color from your hair coloring. It will cause breakage in bleached hair. It will take out a soft curl. And yet it's in almost every product you use. So always read your instructions and your ingredients. It's crucial that you understand which it is. So now that we know we can't have a perm without ammonia, regardless of how they disguise it by changing its name, it's still there. Now we have 3 classifications. We have the traditional, we have the neutral perms, and we have the acid perms. So when we're looking at our pH scale up here, I'm going to bring the board a little bit closer. When you're looking at your pH scale, the traditional perms are 8.5 to 9.5. Actually, it's 9.6. Yeah, the FDA says that's maximum for permanent waving. The textbooks, some mention 9.6, some say 9.5. Pick ever one at your state board answer that's the closest. This is the only pH you have to know. They don't ask you the pHs of any other product because they're not regulated. The FDA regulates permanent wave solution, and that's because 100 years ago we had electrical perms where they electrocuted your hair and fried it and frizzed it. Yeah, and so then we ended up with permanent waves, cold waves. That's why they're called a cold wave, is because we had heat waves first. We used electricity to curl the hair. My teacher was in the San Francisco 1906 earthquake, and they had this big hood, like a hooded dryer. The hair was attached to rods, and it was wrapped around the hair. The hair was wrapped around the rod, and she said women were running out of the salons, pulling the machine behind them. Okay, women back in 1906 were not. A lady didn't color her hair, so you know how they have the curtain that goes around you in the hospital? Well, they had what they called a booth. And when you went in to have your hair colored or lightened, they pulled that curtain around you so nobody could see what the hairdresser was doing. So when Clairol came out with the lift and deposit tint, their slogan was hair color so natural, only your hairdresser knows for sure, and that's because we were in a booth and we were hidden. We don't have those issues now. Now we can be who we are, what we want to be, how we want to be, and we're all good to go. That's traditional. The 9.6 was for normal to resistant hair, where the 8.5 was for tinted hair, and that's all we had. There wasn't anything else. Then as the chemists became more productive and we studied more and we learned more, we added the neutral and acid perms. So a neutral perm is going to be 6.5 to 7.5, because remember the FDA says that's neutral. I can advertise I'm pH balanced if I'm between 6.5 and 7.5. So a pH of 7.5 is designed for normal to resistant hair. And a pH of 6.5 was for tinted hair. So how does that equate to this one over here? How does that make sense? Go one step even further. Go into the acid perm. 6.5 says it's for normal to resistant, and 5.5 says it is for tinted hair, and that one is more safe to use on bleach. So how do I know which one do I use? Which way do I go, George? How do I know which is the better choice? Because obviously, where pH is important, if one company says 7.5 is for normal to resistant, another company says 9.5 is normal, and another company tells you 6.5 is, who's right? Is there a right? Remember, I've told you there's no such thing as bad product out there. Once again now, I have to go back to the structure of my hair. I'm going to choose which perm to use based on hair structure. If my client has medium to coarse hair, I need to stay in the traditional area. There's not going to be enough ammonia gas in there to convert all of the cystine to cysteine. But if my coarse hair is tinted, maybe highlighted and tinted, now I have a porosity issue. I also have changed my cortex, because remember, in my tint I have ammonia, and I also have oxygen, and I have those changes going on, so the hair inner structure isn't as strong. So now I can drop down to the 7.5 for normal hair. And if the hair is fine and bleached like mine is, now you have to say, okay, Miss I. James, you have a choice. You can either have blonde hair on your head or curly hair on the floor, because you can't do both. My hair is fine, it's bleached, I'm not getting both. And you have to be able to tell that client No, you are not a good candidate for a permanent wave. The money that you're going to get from my perm is not worth the lawsuit that could ensue afterward. And for heaven's sakes, don't have me sign a release form that says, I understand that if my hair goes down the sink, I will not hold you responsible. Okay, so I sign that paper and then I sue you anyway. I take it to the judge. The judge is going to look at you and say, you knew this could happen? Why did you do it? You're the professional. If you thought that this hair was going to break off, why did you do it? You're guilty of neglect. That is negligence. Don't have him sign anything. Do the perm, then if you end up in court, but you say, Your Honor, I had no idea that was going to happen. Oh, am I teaching you to tell white lies? Maybe. Be careful.